The silver price is looking long-term bullish right now, and we're going to break down the latest price moves, the price floor for silver, what's happening. We're also going to be breaking down the most important geopolitical things, economic things that you need to know if you own any type of precious metals. So silver, copper, gold, platinum, you better pay attention to this video because we're going to be talking about it all in today's video. What you can expect out of the world, what you need to know, and is things going to get more chaotic? And we're also going to take a special look at this table because this is solidifying everything we've been saying right here on this channel. So if you love your silver, stacking silver, and commodities, make sure to like, subscribe, and economic updates right here because that's exactly what we're doing. Fresh live alpha right here. And I'll also read out some of your comments you have left me in the description of last video. So we'll go through some of these at the end because we are building out a nice community here. So if you have a comment about silver, what you're doing, or even if you own other types of precious metals, guys, comment down below. I will read them as we start to grow the number of subs on this channel. And the community right now, it's small, but it's growing, and that's the way we like it right now. Now let's get straight into today's video. And I have to say, there's a lot of strength coming in for the silver price. So there's a lot of predictions. Look, silver's going to crash. It's going to significantly retrace. Silver is saying absolutely not right now. And that is bullish. That is not only bullish in the short term, it's bullish in the long term. So if we actually plot some very important levels of support and resistance right here, you can see right here on this price level, $70 is bouncing like an absolute boss in the short term. So if you're a short-term trader for silver, again, I'm not trading this short term. My strategy for silver is to stack this, right? I just want to buy it. I want to accumulate this over a long term. I see this as a long-term investment. It's not a short-term investment for me, but everyone is different. Again, not financial advice on the channel. Do whatever you want. This is a channel of pure freedom right here. So you guys have freedom to operate. But you can see right here, $70. That is a floor. It keeps bouncing off that. That is showing serious levels of strength. So boom, boom, boom. We've had 4 bounces off the $70 level. Wow, that is looking good. And it continues to work its way back up. The all-time high for silver, when there was a lot of great news coming in, a bit of FOMO, a bit of hype coming in right here, was $83, $84. And, you know, the thing is, you have to understand at the moment that this is fundamentally backed by some very, very good data. We'll talk about the US national debt a little bit later in the video, but this thing is completely broke, right? There is no plan to fix this. This number keeps going up. We'll talk about that in a bit. But before we do, let's talk about this table that I've seen come out of the Silver Institute. And I think it's important for people to understand, you know, this is where the fundamentals for silver come in. Now, you can see right here, we have the supply amount up the top. We have the demand amount coming up down here. And, you know, what's interesting to understand is this is in a deficit. So the supply is not matching the demand, which means there is a shortfall. There is an industrial shortfall for this. There is a huge demand for it. It seems to be growing. And the mining production, you know, the recycling, it's not really matching up with the demand. And this is why I consider silver, you know, a long-term horizon. So when I look at silver, I get quite excited by these numbers because some of these things, you know, they're hard to fix. And if you figure out where the demand is going, you know, where the supply is going, you know, this can be very, very exciting over the long term. But I just want to point out some numbers right here. So you can see right here, 2024, we had 1,000 units, million ounces right here. That was the supply, right? The demand was 1,164. You can see right here in 2025, this might be in 2025, we have 1,030 total supply, million ounces, and the demand is 1,148, right? And you can see this is not just, you know, based off, say, unimportant demand, say like, you know, jewelry and things like that. That can, you know, wither away when times get really rough, right? You know, people, you know, when times get rough and when things are getting chaotic politically, things like jewelry, you know, I wouldn't be, you know, too focused on that. I'd be focused more on the industrial stuff. So stuff that needs to be used in terms of industry, growing countries, and also, you know, warfare and things like that. And you can see industrial demand, it's getting big, right? There's real demand for this for silver. And that's something we really need to, you know, focus in on. In terms of geopolitical unrest, you can see right here, we have a lot of stuff coming in from Iran. So there is a lot of speculation. There's going to be more things happening with, you know, Iran. And, you know, during these times where there are events happening, right? So there are wars and conflicts, not that I'm really too much of a fan of, you know, foreign conflicts and things like that. But you have to understand the fundamentals that people do, go into precious metals, gold, silver, platinum, and we'll talk about copper as well. But that's another thing to have on the radar in 2026. And I think this is only going to get more and more chaotic as things go through. So you're going to see things like, China, Taiwan. That's probably the biggest one that hasn't really erupted yet. But people are saying that could happen in the next year or the year after. We're going to have all this stuff in the Middle East. You got Iran kicking off. You got the whole Middle East, just fighting constantly like it has been. And you've got Russia and Ukraine, and all these things spell a lot of important things we have to have on the radar for silver. That's going to be government spending, right? So the government, and we can see this right here with the U.S. national debt. It's going to continue to climb up, right? The government spending will not stop. They'll keep spending on military stuff. That's going to go up. In real inflation is still going to go up. So one thing you're going to see is you're going to see politicians saying, they're getting inflation under control. But what they don't tell you is people's salaries, haven't been increasing, right? So a lot of salaries have been frozen. Inflation's been going up. The real purchasing power over time is actually going down. And that's why assets like gold, silver, platinum, these things tend to do pretty well over the long term. And even copper, we'll talk more about this a bit later on the video, it's doing very well as well. So precious metals are looking hot as we move into 2026. Now, in the short term for silver, one thing we have to also factor in is we are getting this real effect of China closing the gates. So 1st of January, China closed the gates on the kingdom, and that means less and less silver will flow out of China. And remember, this might be a precursor to what it wants to do with Taiwan. So remember, if there is really going to be a conflict between, China and the Western countries, say USA, one thing they're going to want to do is they're going to have their, supplies ready before that actually hits. So, as soon as their supply lines get cut off, they're going to be limited to the amount of, raw materials they have in China. And that's just one thing they might be stockpiling, right? So they are known to stockpile a lot of natural resources, the country of China. And it's just something we have to have on the radar as, the silver fundamentals look stronger and stronger and stronger. So I think in the short term, silver is looking good. I think fundamentally it's looking good. And if we have a look at some other things, I did get some comments about copper. So shout out to you guys talking about copper in one of the last videos. Maybe not the last one, but maybe the one before. We had some comments about copper. Copper is an interesting commodity, and the reason is it's like a future commodity. So why do you need copper? You need copper to electrify areas, right? So if you want electricity, you want to expand, you want to grow, you want to build new buildings, you need lots of copper, and copper is like a long-term commodity right here. And you can see, look, looks like there's been a little bit of manipulation and dumping right here, but very long-term, copper is fundamentally a pretty strong another strong asset class right here. And you can see right here the copper price, it is I've got a very long window. This is a monthly window. It is continuing to climb. But I have to say, look, when I look at silver, when I look at gold, I'm not short-term trading any of these, right? So you have to understand I'm looking for long-term windows. So I'm talking about multiple years, potentially even 10 years, more than that. That's my personal strategy. But as always, not financial advice. Make up your own decisions. But that's just something I'm building, because I think you have to also, factor in the long-term, trends. And I don't think anytime soon they're going to have a plan to fix like U.S. national debt. I think this thing's going to continue to go up. I think there's going to be a lot of geopolitical uncertainty. I think politicians will continue to be politicians and just spend money and not really benefit your average person out there. And that's why I think precious metals right now, they're probably one of the most important areas to be looking into as we roll on in this world, right? It's going to get more and more chaotic. Now, having said that about silver, gold, copper, let's talk about some of your comments as well. So Peter says, I've been getting 90% for 7 under since the refineries stopped taking. I remember big premiums of 90. I'm half 999 and half 90, really killing it with my small mining stocks this year too. So shout out to Peter right there. And yes, you have to understand as well, there's a big difference between paper silver and actually owning the stuff. So if you own the physical silver, remember, there's a bit of risk. If you just buy the paper, say ETFs and things like that, there is some degree of risk with, whether there is actually backing of the vaults, because a lot of people say there is manipulation. There is definitely room to warrant that. And there's actually premiums as well. So you buy the physical, there is going to be a premium on that opposed to the paper. It usually doesn't go the other way. So the physical is more expensive. And great stuff right there from Peter. Peter's also stacking for his wife as well, so shout out to that comment right there. Great stuff. Young Pistachio says he's not buying silver at these levels either, just holding my stash for the long term. So respect right there. Peter says I'll still be buying it in at 100, thinking it's going to go to 240 in a year minimum. Yeah, I think there's a lot of strong long-term fundamentals for silver. Remember, you look at this. Where's this graph? So we're seeing real demand. We're seeing supply go down, and also I think the other factor people should have on the radar is going to be these geopolitical. This scene is it's not settled, right? I think there's going to be a big conflict between China and the USA, and I think that's going to be very, very interesting to what happens to the world supply of commodities. Because at the moment, I just want to reiterate that China, it's somewhat limited in its natural resources, but what we could see is if there is like another really, really big conflict. All its little supply lines to all of Africa and Taiwan might get cut off, because at the moment what the China's strategy does is they move into countries like Africa and they actually extract a lot of the natural resources and bring them back to China. So this is just going to schism the whole market if something big does happen. So you can actually see documentaries on China. They're in Africa, they're in all these countries, right? What are they after? They're after the minerals, they're after the commodities, right? They're after the precious metals. That's what China's after. So they're big into Africa. And again, look at the distance between these countries and just watch out for what happens, right? That's going to be an important factor to have on the radar. Again, good for precious metals. And Randy says, I don't buy into it, take some profit and buy back at 38. Randy, I'm not sure if that's going to happen, $38, but we'll see, right? Everyone's free to believe what they want. And again, I encourage you guys to do your own research, make your own decisions, not financial advice. But we are going to be talking, look, big copper, big silver, precious metals, geopolitics. If you like that stuff, subscribe to this channel. We'll have more of those updates coming up, and I'd love to see a big silver squeeze as well. I see a lot of speculation happening here over on X. We'll see how it goes, and I do think potentially in terms of price predictions, yes, we could potentially see some huge numbers as well for silver. So remember, fundamentally, it's a strong use case asset. There's real demand for this. There's real chances of things just going pear-shaped in 2026, 2027, 2028. And I think, precious metal, silver will be a big beneficiary of that. But guys, that's a major update. Really appreciate you tuning in. See you in the next one.